Empire Baseball. It's our first in a series called New York Empire Experts. Truth be told, I couldn't be more excited because you'd think we were going to, hit the ground and get warmed up. No, this is about hitting the ground running if there ever was. First of all, look, we're going to bring in experts from around the world of youth sports, from the athletic side of things to the psychology side of things. I mean, we are going to bring in people that can share with all of you, whether you're a parent or a player, can share some expertise that will improve your experience on the field, off the field, and certainly with us, and even when you leave the grounds in the arena of New York Empire Baseball. So tonight, I got to tell you, we're excited to have two experts that, I mean, look on your screen right now, very early in their career. They're already at the forefront, certainly, of hitting instruction at the highest levels of professional baseball. They're here with us tonight to share their expertise on how and what they do and how that can be applied to all of you. And that's the focus of New York Empire Experts. It's not, hey, let's go out and get a ball player to tell us how awesome his career has been. That's, for the most part, I mean, let's be honest, that's useless. Maybe it's motivating, but not as useful as what you're going to learn here tonight. Quick introduction. We have Gary Russo. Gary and I have been talking. My goodness, Gary, we'll forget what we said earlier today. We've been talking a long time. Gary's the regional manager of Blast Motion. Blast Motion is the official bat sensor technology of Major League Baseball. For those of you familiar or unfamiliar with the bat sensor, you put it on the bottom of your bat. It measures what your bat is doing. That's a really simplistic way of saying it. Measures what your bat is doing during your swing. And we're going to talk a whole lot about why that's important, certainly to us at Empire and obviously in the major leagues. Our other guest is Joey Hawkins, is minor league baseball assistant hitting coordinator for the St. Louis Cardinals. And in spite of the fact that in 1984 and 1985, as a Mets fan growing up in Brooklyn, I had, I think, genuine hatred for white. I mean, you don't even know these guys. I mean, now I'm sure you drilled in the history of the organization, but the name Jack Clark or Tommy Herr or Willie McGee well, you put it all aside for Ozzie Smith. He transcended the being on the other team. You loved him no matter what.
Right.
But 84, certainly 85 was one of the great rivalries of my life in Major League Baseball. But that being said, certainly what Mark DeJohn said is true. One of the most disciplined organizations in the major leagues, if not the most disciplined. And, I had the pleasure and the opportunity to be on a call last week with Joey. And the first thing I did when I got off the call was call Gary. I said, Gary, I got to have Joey and you talk to New York Empire Baseball, because what I learned and what you all shared in a very short amount of time was, I mean, gems, absolute gems. So I'm thrilled to have you both here. I'll tell you now, we already have a ton of questions. So I know we said 8 p.m. to 9. We're just going all night. I mean, that's pretty much what this is going to come down to.
Let's do it.
So let's jump right in. For those of you, if you have extra questions, if we can get to them, great. Just put them up in the chat, put them in the Q&A. We'll get to them as quickly as we can, but I don't want to cut anybody off. We do have one exciting announcement that Gary, as we talk through this, he extended to every New York Empire baseball player. And Gary, I got to tell you before I even announce it, thank you. That sort of commitment to an organization. We don't do anything with you yet. I have a feeling after tonight, we are going to be hand in hand pretty much every day with you. Gary put this together. It's this week only through the end of May. Any New York Empire baseball player can get their own Blast Motion sensor. It's normally $150. I know Amazon had like a 20% off sale. It was $120 for a while. I know you're doing a COVID-19 special on the website. It's like $75 plus shipping. So it's like $90. Gary put together something for us. It's $70, no shipping, for any one of our players to have their own bat sensor. Better than that is what he put together for the analytics side of things. So for you to have all the analytics, all the information on an app, working with Blast Motion, similar to the way we work with K-Motion, we'll talk more about that later, is $150 for the year, and that includes the bat sensor. So we'll talk more about that later. Gary, I just want to say on behalf of our coaching staff, because we're excited to have that, but on behalf of 500 baseball players, and thank you. It's amazing.
Of course.
So let's jump right in. Joey Hawkins, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do there at the Cardinals.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Toronto, Ontario. So Northern ball player. I know the life of working in a facility for quite a few months out of the year, and obviously spent quite a bit of time playing up in New York due to distance from Toronto. So yeah, I grew up there. Went on to play at Missouri State University, which is a mid-major Division I program in Springfield, Missouri. Had a great ride there. Played on some awesome teams with some really good players. And then I was fortunate enough to get drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals. So I played inside that organization for about 2.5 years. Wasn't the greatest player ever. Kind of saw the writing on the wall. And once I was released, I was pretty excited to get into coaching. So from there, I coached briefly at a junior college for about 3 months. And then right place, right time, got a Division I full-time job at St. Louis University, which is another strong mid-major program here in Missouri. And had a good run there for a couple of years, and that landed me back with the Cardinals organization. And I'm currently the assistant minor league hitting coordinator and also our rookie ball manager. So I'm on two sides of the ball inside of player development. So I'm pretty fortunate, and like you said, such a rich tradition inside our organization, very disciplined, something we take a lot of pride in.
That's awesome. Thank you. Great to have you here.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Gary Russo, Blast Motion, talk to us. Tell us a little more about yourself and what you do at Blast.
Yeah, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, so I knew all the Cardinals names you were throwing out there. That's mandatory, being born and raised in St. Louis. Met Joey through a friend of ours who both played at Missouri State. He, growing up in St. Louis, we had a bunch of guys go play down there, so I met Joey through a mutual friend, and we've become very close, so excited that he can jump on tonight. I played baseball at Miami of Ohio for 3 years, was another mid-major college player. Tried to get drafted after I was done, never had the opportunity. And so I started working in the agency side of the business, where I was working for a large agency that represented strictly just baseball players. So we had over 50 clients, and was just involved in the player development side and evaluation side for them. And then got hooked up with Blast. Been with Blast for about 1.5 years now. And I run the entire East Coast. So I see all of the travel teams, colleges, and high schools that are implementing the technology. And then also get to work with our account management team who cross over into the MiLB side. So get to have a lot of exposure to pretty much every level of baseball using the tech. And it's fun for me to be able to have, pick guys like Joey's brain on a day-to-day basis and hear what they're doing with it with an organization like the Cardinals and learn from them and just share best practices with what we're seeing out in the field. So super excited to be here and really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. So actually, what you said leads right into the first question that I had for you. And this is for both of you, actually. 10 years ago, when we got started, we had a very sort of tech approach to everything. I'll let it on, in case anybody doesn't know, I'm a geek, proud one. But talk of launch angle and exit velocity met with all sorts of moaning and groaning from traditional baseball coaches. And quite frankly, it still does. I mean, there are people, look, A-Rod the other day said, if you believe in launch angle hitting, you're never going to hit a baseball. And, you have to swing down, which of course we all know is just not true. You two are at the highest levels of baseball and baseball analysis and instruction. What's the reality of baseball instruction right now? What are the tools that coaches and players of teams are using at the highest level? Not the anecdotal stuff of, oh, here's what I did in 1978, right? What's the reality of Major League Baseball, college baseball at the highest levels today?
I can touch on it from the pro side for sure, and obviously working in college a little bit. But I think from our angle, the biggest thing is how can we consume as much information as we can to ultimately help our players. Every level you're at in this game, whether it's junior college, Division I, or the minor leagues, we're trying to get to that next level. So, it's all information. It's not necessarily all good or all productive towards players, but as coaches, we need to make sure we're getting as much of it as we can to basically grow and build a program for each player. I think I was familiar with that at the college level and even more now in professional baseball. So I don't know why baseball really struggles with the launch angle term. Like it's just a metric, right? Like it's the same as like pitch velocity or or, it's the same as a batting average. It's just a number. But for some reason, people get caught up into it a little bit too much. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just a metric, and sometimes it can help players understand their swing a little bit more.
Gary, thoughts
Yeah,
on
just to piggyback on that, I mean, a lot of what we see on the college side and guys that use this at a high level in college, your Michigans, your Arkansas, I mean, they have TrackMan at their field. So they're able to get launch angle and exit velocity pretty much every time they take BP and every time they're playing in a game. But as Joey just mentioned, it's just a number. So from what I see, a lot of people seem to be really geared on having a really good process and then letting that dictate the results that follow. I think I mean, Jordan, I know you and I have talked just about business and life in general, and I think we can agree that having a good process is probably the foundation of anything you want to do, or whatever you want to do if you want to be good at it. So what they're really trying to understand is, okay, we can take this results-based data, but we need to understand what the process looks like as well, and then change that to help the outcome. Because if we just try to change the outcome without the process that produces it, we're in a really weird spot. So from what I see, it's a holistic view of the player, a holistic view of everything going on. If a guy is struggling with, his launch angle, you're probably going to see an organization then go look at his attack angle. If Joey's working with a player that has 70 grade raw power, which is what we probably say like a 115 max exit velocity in pro ball, right, Joey? Probably around there, 113, 114. And his, launch angle, he's hitting a ton of ground balls and his launch angle's down, and he looks at his attack angle and it's negative. I'm sure Joey's going to start working on that with the player to approach the pitch a little bit better. So it's useful information, but it's not the end all be all. I think what everyone's doing is looking at the result to try to better help them understand the process, and then just continually hone that to drive those results and improve them.
So you touched on a couple of technologies in there, certainly TrackMan and others.
Mm-hmm.
Why hitting technology, right? What is the technology? How has that changed things? Has it changed the approach of instruction and coaching? And what are some of the other technologies that are being used, and why? What does the technology do for a team, for a coach, for a player right now?
Yeah, and I'll let Joey kind of touch on this on the pro side because they use pretty much everything from like a TrackMan, a Rapsodo hitting, a K-Motion, K-Vest, Edgertronic cameras. And what those are is TrackMan is post-ball flight. It's like a hit tracks on steroids that looks at the whole field. It's what traditionally was in Major League Parks before they switched over to Hawkeye. Edgertronic cameras let you watch your swing as slow motion as you can possibly imagine. Imagine watching it just as slow as you could ever humanly imagine watching something. That's basically an Edgertronic camera. Ours are obviously a pre-impact sensor. K-Vest is a wearable like K-Motion that tells you your posture, which is also pre-impact. And then the Rapsodo hitting is something you can use in a cage that also kind of tells you your ball flight info, just like TrackMan. The difference between Rapsodo hitting and TrackMan is Rapsodo hitting will tell you the ball spin off your bat and not just exit velo launch angle. So I think organizations are kind of still figuring out how you appropriately weight these tools. I think they're all using them. I think they're all trying to use them effectively. But at the end of the day, the end all be alls, not the end all be alls, but the consistencies I see are everyone is very focused on video at the pro level. Everyone is very focused on looking at the game data when it comes to blasts. So obviously the training environment stuff is really great, but what are their guys doing in the game when it matters against a pitcher, not just out in the back cage with Joe throwing beeps and a Rapsodo hitting on. And then they are also weighting that TrackMan, because when a scout used to watch a player and he'd say, Aaron Judge has 80 grade raw power. Well, he hits the ball 120 miles an hour as well. We kind of have a number behind that to justify the grade. So I think you see on TrackMan and like Rapsodo hitting on the post impact side, the video is obviously huge with a lot of organizations, and then blast on the process side during the game. I think they use it a little bit differently in the training setting, but just having them on there in the game to understand what those hitters are doing is really important to them. So that's kind of my perception, I guess, or my experience out in the field, seeing what these organizations are doing on the tech side. And I think Joey can kind of touch on maybe in a little more detail how they're using stuff like TrackMan and the blast and the video and all that stuff, because I know Joey's super well versed in that.
Yeah, so I mean, Gary touched on it really well there. The best way to look at it is we're trying to paint a picture for every player, and how we do that and how we achieve it is through a number of different ways. But ultimately, using all those tools like Gary mentioned, TrackMan, blast, video, Edgertronic, it just gives us options to present ways to make players better. Every guy's a little bit different, but if we can find ways to connect with them, we're going to push the needle a little bit better, a little bit quicker, which is ultimately that's our job, right? Our job is to get guys to St. Louis as fast as we can, and improve them at the quickest rate that we can. So for me, it's you'll hear me probably tonight talk a lot about a systematic approach. If you have a system that flows with all those things and that players understand and coaches can communicate, which is the most important thing, you see the best results. With that being said, I think probably one of the most, like, not overused, but maybe misinterpreted slogans in baseball is trust the process, when really you need to like build one and own it and work it and evolve it and constantly make it grow, opposed to just trusting it. So I think there's organizations, there's colleges, there's travel teams, there's facilities that have figured that out. It's exciting to see, but it just comes down to the overall system that you create with all those tools.
That's great. So in using the tools, I mean, look, we've been using Blast as coaches. How many players, how many teams are actually using Blast? Or, certainly, I mean, I don't know if you'd speak to some of the other technology. Obviously, K-Motion's with, nearly every team right now. Are the Cardinals using Blast? Are other teams using Blast? Do some players swear by it? Other players say they don't want to use it. What's it all about?
Yeah, we have 90% of the major league market. So a majority of your teams are using Blast on a day-to-day basis. 5% that don't use us don't even use sensors. And so for the market that's using sensors, I think we pretty much own all of that. I can't speak to the other technology. I do know most teams are obviously using TrackMan and Hawkeye. And then from the college side, we have over 300 colleges over nationwide. A lot of the Ivy League schools are actually kind of our early adopters on the college side, but we've captured about 70% of the SEC, I think half of the ACC, over half of the Big Ten. And these are full program solutions where every player has his own sensor. So they're using it pretty extensively. And then on the usage side, from what I've seen, and Joey can speak to this too, I think it all depends on the athlete. Some guys want to see the data and know what they're doing. Other guys want the coach just to see it and tell them, and coach and how they would typically talk what they need to do. Some guys just want to be told, hey, swing up a little bit more, not your attack angle is -2 and I need it in between 6 and 8. And then there's some guys that want that granular information and to see the data and see the information, that type of player. But that's on the amateur side. Joey, can you touch on the pro side and how they use it?
Yeah, it's, I mean, we use it all the time. This year we're working to get it in the game a little bit more. We used it in rookie ball with me last year, which just helps the overall picture for a hitter. But I think in general, hitters are more than ever more curious and interested in getting better and learning this information. So our goal as an organization is we got to have the answers for them. If we don't have it, at the snap of a finger, that's okay. We just got to make sure that we can relay the answer to them as quick as we can. If we don't, they're going to go outside the organization for it, which is ultimately not what we need when we're trying to build that culture and that consistency. But yeah, I mean, it's a part of our daily use every day. Like Gary said, every hitter's different from how they interpret it and how they understand it and how it needs to be presented to them.
So, that leads me to a question that we had put in here. Our coaching staff was 2 words that we live by: efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency meaning how much work do we have to put in to see some improvement, whether as a coach for a player or as a player. And then effectiveness, how good can we get? So has the technology, I mean, obviously you can speak to Blast Motion and Joey, you can speak to others potentially. How has the technology added to efficiency and effectiveness, right? Is it making, I guess a simple way of asking the question is it making players better faster?
I think for us, it's about creating that system that's going to make them improve faster. So it gives us another tool in our toolbox. With that being said, it doesn't guarantee results. That athlete still needs to put in the work, and the coach needs to still create a good streamline of communication between whatever piece of tech we're using and the skill that the athlete is trying to recreate or build upon. But overall, I think the biggest thing for us that it helps us with is you're doing a drill or you're trying to learn something new, like, is it actually making them better? Right? You look across like social media and Twitter and Instagram and stuff, like there's a lot of people that guarantee drills work. But for me, like you have to be able to show me that it's actually worked. And one drill might work for you, but it might not work for me. And Blast gives you that system and that process to basically evaluate if your drill, if your practice environment is translating into the game.
Gary, you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And it just gives hitters information now. Like Joey and I joke, we didn't have this stuff when we were playing, and pitchers have had it for like 30 years. You could work with a guy and say, hey, you're throwing harder, and you had a radar gun to tell him he was. You could tell me I was swinging faster, but I didn't know when I was playing. I didn't have the information that's available now. It was way more subjective. And you play in college and you play in a new summer league every year, and you have like 6 hitting, and your guy back home, you have like 5, 6 hitting coaches when it's all said and done by the end of your college career, and they're all telling you different things. So I think the consistency it's able to create up and down an organization is really important. And I know Joey's really, that's just a big part of his role at the Cardinals is kind of creating that consistency and that communication up and down the ladder and between the organization so that their top prospects are all, that, you know, the game plan is consistent. And it just gives them that information. But yeah, I would agree with that 100%. For us, it's on the amateur side, our challenge is to create those systems as what, like similar to what they're doing at the pro level. That's our big initiative, is how do we create that system for you guys that the Cardinals are using, you know, at the professional level.
And that's exactly where I wanted to take this. So I'm glad you touched on that. How has baseball training changed for young ball players, you know, and how is it, you know, as they go from Pee-wees to travel to school, you know, high school or college, and then maybe more importantly from both of you, what's being done at the highest levels that we can bring down to the youth level that makes sense for young ball players?
Great question. I think the biggest thing that really is just an issue at all levels, even at the professional level, and Gary kind of mentioned it earlier, is like building what the system should look like. Simplistic approach is the best way to do it, whether you're in the big leagues, whether you're in the minor leagues, or whether you're in travel baseball. And I think people really struggle with that inside of the game because there's so much tech and information now. They don't know how to process it and create that system. It's as simple as just building your philosophy first. And then once you figure out what you believe in, right, whether you're a travel ball or you're a big league team, going off of your philosophy and what you believe in, now you know what you need to work at, right? Like if you value something specific, right? Like you value some sort of training, some sort of practice environment, or some slogan, go from there and then kind of branch out and figure out what you need to live up to that philosophy. And I think a lot of people in the game struggle with that. They want to say like, trust the process, but they don't have a process. They want to say that their hitting philosophy is X, Y, and Z, but they have all the tech in the world and they don't know how to relate it back to that philosophy. That's the biggest challenge that people face. So creating a simple approach towards that is the best way to start.
Wow.
Very good answer. I don't want to follow that, Joe. No, on our end, like, and I'll just touch on something Blast specific because it came to my mind. This tool is used by, I mean, players at the top. I think guys like Goldschmidt and Karp are using this in spring training, Joe, right?
Yeah, a lot of our big leaguers.
There are certain metrics that Blast has that you can compare yourself to a major league player, and it is not age specific. Now, if you're a 10-year-old, you're not going to swing the bat 80 miles an hour like Aaron Judge, and you're not going to have a rotational acceleration at 25 Gs. You're just not. And if you do, call me. Let's chat offline. But you're able to look at how long you stay in the hitting zone and compare yourself to a JD Martinez or a Paul Goldschmidt or a Mike Trout, because they stay in the hitting zone for a very long time. And you don't have to be that big and strong and mature physically to stay in the hitting zone a long time. So we have certain metrics that you can benchmark yourself at the highest levels, and it now just gives you more information. If you're that youth player that wants to play varsity, you now know what those averages look like. If you're a high school player that wants to play in college, you have an idea now of what that hitter actually looks like from a process standpoint. And if you're a guy in college that wants to play in the big league, same thing. You now have that information at your disposal to really understand what it takes to get to that next level. So as you move up the ladder, you can use this at any age group to push yourself to that next step. And then once you're in the big leagues, I mean, as he just mentioned, these guys at that level are still using the tools to improve their craft. So it never stops.
That's fantastic. Joe, you said something, and Gary, I love the way that you brought that. I mean, you really brought that to the youth ball player, because forget about the ability to compare, like you said, swing harder than Aaron Judge, because that's, there's little value to that, right?
Yeah.
The ability to do things that are not age specific, we live for that as an organization. And now, Joey, I'm going to throw something out there. I'm going to stick my neck in the guillotine and see if it gets chopped off here. You said having a system, having a philosophy, living by it is absolutely critical, because if you may have a philosophy, you may have a system, but not everything ties together, you're not going to have a very successful organization and certainly a successful bunch of players. Here's our philosophy. First, I want to know your opinion on our philosophy, particularly as it relates to youth ball players who, look, we already know not many of them are going to make the major leagues, but they want to. So I'm going to give you the philosophy, and feel free to say, absolutely not, you guys are heading in the wrong direction, and we'll say it in front of dozens and dozens of people right now. Our philosophy for everybody right up to age 14, from age 4, is learn how to swing a baseball bat as hard as you can, with no attention to whether or not you make contact. Whether or not, we hear parents all the time say, just make contact, and we beg them not to say that ever again. And we already have a question that just popped up around this, so we'll get to it. But we beg them to not worry about contact from ages 4 to 14, because in our philosophy is you need to learn to be the best athlete you can be, swing as hard as you can be, swing as hard as you can swing, and swing as efficiently as you can swing, so that when you get to the higher levels, you're already hitting balls not only out of the infield, but potentially out of the park. Because if you learn to just make contact, which is really cool when you're 7 years old, right? You hit the slow roller, the pitcher bobbles it, and you're safe at first, and everybody says, hey, good job. We don't believe that's a good job. So I want your candid thoughts, and Gary, feel free to jump in as well, on that's our philosophy from 4 to 14. Do the St. Louis Cardinals have a place for the ball players coming out of this organization?
So here's why I like it. Because you believe in it, right? And you can preach why it's good. That's the most important thing, right? Like, it's got to be that top-down approach, where if you're believing in it, it's easy to instill it into your coaches and your players. As far as a tactical approach, yeah, I think it's great for that age group, because we never want to set limits for kids, right? So if we can figure out what their max bat speed is, or if they can even swing the bat as hard as they can yet, it's good to figure that out at a young age, right? And once they figure out what that peak top end swing is, personally, I think they're going to kind of be able to self-adjust when it comes to a game to be able to dial it back to make contact. I think that's what good athletes naturally do. So I'm all for it. But the biggest thing is, you believe in it, and it's a simple approach to streamline across your organization and to your players, and it's fun, right? Takes the stress away from the kids. It's much easier for a kid to say, you know what, I went out there and I took my 3 best cuts, than coming out of that at bat and with his head down saying I didn't make contact, right? So, I'm a big fan of it. I don't think I'm going to roll up to Paul Goldschmidt and say you need to have this philosophy, right? But that's why it's okay to have different philosophies at different age groups in this game. It's okay to have similar systems, but it's definitely okay to have a different philosophy based on the age. And I think that's such a good age to try and see what their limits are, right? Push those limits and then allow them to kind of self-adjust and self-organize on their own.
I mean, I'll be honest, Gary, I'm gonna just feed this to you. One of the reasons why we're in love with some of the tech that we use, particularly why we want to adopt blast motion, is it doesn't measure, how many times did you just make contact? It gives you an opportunity to learn how to swing, right? And then from learning how to swing, then we can teach you how to hit. But if you don't know how to swing, you're not going to be a good hitter. And so,
Yeah.
fixing that by saying, let's just make contact makes you a worse hitter. So is that the right mindset for a Blast? Is it the right mindset for the level of baseball at which you played, coached, interacted? What do you think? Are they on the
For
right
sure.
path with that philosophy?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And it gives you, again, it just gives you the information and the data to support that you're training with that intent. I mean, you can take an evaluation of a 10-year-old player and understand his max bat speed. Whenever he swings, it better be near that max. If we have a 11U player and his max bat speed is, 55 miles an hour and he's in a game and it's 47, that's an issue. We have the information behind it to say, hey, you're not swinging as hard as you can. Whether you made contact, whether it was a good outcome or not, you weren't swinging with your maximum intent. And I always go back to, I think some of the best hitters in the world come from the Dominican Republic. And if you go watch them play at a low level, basically a lot from what Joey said, I know he spent a ton of time down there. They're trying to hit the ball as hard as they possibly can. They're trying to throw the ball as hard as they possibly can. And they're used to hitting with intent. And when they come up, they're athletic and they're fun to watch because they've grown up their whole life playing like that.
No fear of failure.
None.
Yeah, that's the heart of everything that we teach. So we got questions rolling in right now. So the first one is, and it I guess dovetails right off of what we're talking about. It's what's the right approach for a young hitter, and does it change as they get older? And we've touched on this, and I'm gonna jump in and share a little, some of our thoughts around what we were just talking about, and then kind of leave it to the both of you for what's right. Our approach is Joey, you said it right at the top of the hour. You said process over outcome. It's all we think about. It's all we measure, right? We're not sitting here saying, how many times did you make contact? For us, it's first learn to swing and then learn to hit. And if you build a great swing and you use it, Gary, to your point, you'll be successful in the long run. There are going to be times you strike out, but if you're measuring, how do I avoid failure? You won't be successful in the long run. So for us, it's don't just make contact and look to avoid failure. The approach is, we talk about this all the time. We say, if you just make contact, you hit the slow roller and you get out, you walk back to the dugout and someone invariably, whether it's your dad, your mom, your teammates, they all say, hey, good contact. Let's be honest. The three of us have all been there. And certainly the kids that are on this call have been there. In your heart, you didn't make good contact. You got a bunch of friends lying to you at that moment. They just want you to feel better. I'd feel better if somebody says, yeah, that was the hardest swing I've ever seen. If you do that 5 more times in this game, you're going to be 5 for 6, right? To me, that's a successful approach, particularly at the under 14 level. So, for me, we said something recently, which was, if you find it embarrassing to swing and miss, which I don't think it is, obviously, right? If swinging as hard as you can at 12, 10, 14 years old, 8 years old is going to get you, Joey, to a better place when you're older, Gary, like you said, when you get to the high school, college level, I ask this, would you be willing to trade a moment or a game of embarrassment for a lifetime and career of success? So for me, that's our approach to youth hitting. Would love your thoughts. What's the right approach, and how does it change? At the levels that you guys are working with.
I think no, the approach, you use the word embarrassment, but I think embarrassment only comes if you create it in your environment, right? So for me, just listening to you talk about what you guys believe in, it's more about, even if these players don't have the most successful statistics throughout the year, to me, they're going to take away that it's okay to fail, right? And that's important. So kudos to you guys with that, because that's the biggest thing to overcome at a young age. And that sometimes, I don't know the stats, but I would guess that it shies players away from playing baseball because it's a tough game of failure. So if you're telling them it's okay to fail, it's a good start it's a good foundation for those kids. And then as far as the approach, I think it was in 2018, the data could have changed to now, but I'm guessing it didn't. The zone where the pitches are thrown the most in the major leagues with the best pitchers in the world is right down the middle. Pitchers miss down the middle. It's just the reality of it. And sometimes their stuff's so good that hitters miss it, right? But what I'm getting at is if you can't like hit a pitch that's down the middle, like good luck playing this game because that's where most of the pitches come. So at a young age, like just focus on hitting rockets that are thrown down the middle, right? Like you guys do. Like you guys, all right, we're gonna focus on swinging hard. Focus on swinging hard at pitches down the middle. It's a really good place to start.
Does that change when you get to the Cards? Is it swinging pitches hard down the middle?
You better be able to hit that pitch. Let's put it that way. If you can't hit the pitch down the middle and you're sitting on pitches away, we're probably going to have a conversation.
That's not a good thing, huh?
No.
Conversation with
That's all I
Joey
can hit.
swinging through the wheelhouse. Not a good conversation.
Not a good thing.
Gary, any other thoughts on changes to approach or differences? Or
He hit the nail on the head. I was talking to a high-level coach about some of their hitters, and I said, he asked, or he was actually telling me a story, and he was talking to someone in pro ball, and he said, I'm telling my guy, we really got to work on the outside half of the plate, and we really got to improve our swing there to do damage. And he's a guy with really, really good bat speed and really good rotational acceleration and just a ton of juice. And the guy in pro ball is like, at our level, we have guys miss down the middle all the time. So it's not like he's going to get to Division I and never see a cookie again. So being able to punish those and looking for those and having that as your approach will never change and will never do you a disservice as you move up in baseball. From every level we see, guys are, as Joey said, are giving you hittable pitches, and you just have to be ready to drive those with intent. And I think training with that intent is really important because you're never going to understand how to hit like that unless you're always doing it. So
great. So we just got a question that's very, very Empire specific. It says, New York Empire has hit tracks and K motion at the arena. The arena is the name of the facility. Now, how does blast motion fit in, and do players benefit from having their own?
Yeah, great question. So blast again is on the process side. So when we look at the actual swing itself, we're really focused on our bat and what our bat is doing through the zone up until contact. Obviously, the other stuff you're using is more centered around your posture and your sequencing. We're really looking at how long are you in the zone, how are you approaching the pitch, and then how quickly is your bat getting up to speed. Bat speed is great, but we want to be quick too. I can put a Civic and a Lamborghini next to each other and race them down the road, cap them both at 70 miles an hour. The Lambo's going to kill the Civic in the race. They're both going 70 at the finish line, but the Lambo wins because of the acceleration. So we look at the acceleration, we look at the speed, and we're looking at that bat path and how you're approaching the pitch to lead into everything that happens after the fact, which is what you see in a hit tracks, the post impact, the result, the TrackMan, the Rapsodo hitting. And then the K motion obviously complements us on the process side, telling you kind of the sequencing and posture and things like that. And the benefit of having your own sensor is you're almost having the access to a K motion in real time in the game. So you can have K motion in your garage. Are we as 100% accurate as a K motion or KVS? No, we're not. But we're close enough. We're the difference between a stalker and a pocket radar. We will get you in the ballpark. We'll get you in the arena. And that's all you need to know when it comes to a game or it comes to training on your own. And then when you go under the roof of Empire or you go to your training facility, then you can grab that heavy tool, really dive in there and see what's going on. But for us, we give you the ability to track this information anywhere in the country, anywhere you're playing, anywhere you're training, and all that information is filtered back up to your coaching staff so they can monitor your development 24/7.
So it's great. Somebody just wrote, where was this 2 months ago when COVID started? All right.
We've been busy because of that. So, I mean,
we'll have it in everybody's hands in a few days.
Yeah, seriously.
How was that for Blunt? Welcome to New York. So another question came in, and I think it's from a parent of a much younger player. Can a young player use blast motion alone without help from his parents at home?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. The app is very, very interactive. We offer drills and tips and videos in real time. And our training center, they can access via their web platform as well on the computer if they'd like to look into that. But very easy to use. We pride ourselves on that. They can plug and play, get their information in real time, and then we'll recommend drills and things they can do to improve their swing based on what players in their age group are doing.
Yep, that's great. So another, I mean, this is nonstop now. I guess people are picking up on the blast piece, and then we get a couple that are back to the baseball side. What's the difference between the blast sensor and the 1-year analytics piece?
Yeah, great question. The sensor is the actual hardware itself. The analytics piece is how you track and store all your data. So it'd be like having a Fitbit and then wanting to see how many calories you burn. Well, to see how many calories you burned, that's part of our subscription piece. That's part of the player profile. And it also unlocks our premium metrics. So plane connection rotation, which is our three premium metrics, and 3 main metrics is what Joey's using a lot at the professional level. We unlock those for you guys. So you get access to that. All your data is stored under, the cloud. So all your coaches can see you and your instructors, and you can store all of your video to be analyzed in that cloud as well.
It's awesome. And to reiterate, so just to thank you, for those of you who weren't on the call yet, Gary put something together for our players pretty exclusively that is $150 for the year with the sensor, with the analytics, with everything. And that was the original price of the sensor alone. So Gary, I mean, thank you. We're pretty excited to use it. And yet to that guy's point, we needed it 2 months ago for sure. But hey, listen, better late than never. So we got an interesting question here. What should young ball players be doing right now to become the best they can be? And, I'm going to kick this one off with 2 very simple thoughts. And then, Joe, you just jump right in. Number one, and we hear it over and over and over now, and I got this question for the last 10 years, should my kid be playing multiple sports or should he focus? And it's so clear, the answer. It's not, even debatable at this point. Be a great athlete first with fantastic work ethic, doing what you love to do. Go play, right? No encumbrance, no fear of messing. Like we tell the kids all the time, you go play on the beach, are you worried you're going to mess something up? Nobody's worried. When you play wiffle ball on the beach, you're not worried about messing up or striking out. So for me, I love that question. What should a young ball player be doing? Go become a great athlete. Work on the strength, the mobility, the conditioning. It doesn't have to be baseball specific, because we said it earlier today in a class we taught, great athletes become great baseball players. Great 7-year-old baseball players who aren't great athletes don't become great baseball players when they're 14, 18, 21 years old. So for me, be a great athlete with great work ethic. And number 2, just go play.
Yeah, and I think to touch on the original question of what you should be doing right now as an athlete, I spoke with the Toronto Mets, who are a Blast partner as well. And what I mentioned to them was, I think during this pandemic, it's a really good opportunity to set up your days as if you're a college athlete, right? We're in control of our time right now. We have a lot of it. And if you look at a college athlete's schedule, typically work out some point in the morning, right? So let's wake up. It's a good opportunity during this time, if you're a young athlete, to figure out what it takes to gain weight if you need to gain weight. I know that's a hot topic in player development. So eat a good breakfast, get your workout in, whether that's with 0 weights and just becoming a better athlete, running sprints, air squats, push-ups, whatever it takes. And then obviously like a cool down with some foam rolling and mobility, and taking that as serious as you can. Put the phone away and knock out your schoolwork for a few hours, eat a good lunch, and then pick up the bat and the ball and the glove and do some baseball stuff for the afternoon. Film yourself if you're hitting, blast motion like we've talked about, no brainer. And then when you get done with that, eat a good dinner, knock out a little homework, put the phone away again. If you don't have homework, it's always good to pick up a book of any sorts and read, or listen to a podcast, or get on YouTube and research hitters or pitchers. And then, 7 o'clock rolls around, you got the rest of your night to hang out and chill. And I'm a big advocate of guys, like, it's okay to play video games, right? Like, compete on video games. It's part of it. I understand that. So give yourself a couple hours or an hour to do that, and your day's going to look like a college athlete's day. And that's what ultimately I'm sure most of this chat wants to do down the road. So now's a good time to test out the waters, what a day would be like.
That's awesome. Well, our next question actually heads down that road and kind of combines the technology with the college recruitment piece. This kid's really smart, so there's a lot of big words in this one. Here we go. Um, while analytics and certain technological devices have helped tremendously in the game of baseball, how do you stop it from going too far? How do both of you feel about these advancements overlooking essential parts of the game, like knowing how to pitch or knowing where to hit the ball in certain situations? And he says it's mostly pertaining to college recruitment in baseball, but pertains to every age group. So that's a mouthful right there.
Smarter than me.
Yeah. I'll touch first and Joey can go, but I would just say that what we offer is really driven through the coaches, and the coaches are always going to make that experience about the game of baseball. We are not trying to replace coaching. We're not trying to make the game all about analytics. I think it goes too far if a guy is walking back to the dugout and wants to know what his bat speed was his last at bat, or he wants to know, hey, what was my on-plane efficiency that last at bat during the game while he's competing. Taking a step outside and looking at that information, maybe the last month, say, hey, I played 3 tournaments. Let's go look at what my on-plane efficiency was in the month of July and see what I was doing this last month and what we can maybe do to improve it in the off season. When you're actually competing and playing in a game, if it's in your mind, it's gone too far, is my opinion. And that's helped by the coaching staff keeping the focus on that. And I'm sure you guys are doing that. When it's time to play baseball, it's time to play baseball. But that information can be captured and used to better help your son or you as a player develop, while he's pursuing that dream of playing college professional baseball. And having that information and understanding how to use that will only benefit you. And your coaching staff is never going to pull a kid aside, I'm sure, during a game and tell him, his rotational acceleration was a few points too low. So for me, I think if you're playing and it's in your mind and it's somehow like in your your stream of consciousness, it's gone too far. But when you're training and stuff, it's obviously a great tool. When it's time to play, lace up the spikes and go kick somebody's what.
So is it fair to say Blast makes you a smarter trainer, whether you're the coach or the player? It just focuses your training. You still
100%.
have to work on the situation analysis, the mental side of the game. It just makes your that's what we alluded to earlier. It makes your
100%.
training time more efficient. I know what to work on. I can't think about that in the game. Otherwise, I won't be able to compete. But it makes my training time and my focus more efficient.
Bingo. Yep, exactly.
Honestly, that's a really good question. If it came from a player, even better.
Yeah, it did.
I think that's a really good question for a player to ask that. I'm going to answer it in 2 different ways. One, just going off of what Gary said. For me, there's game development and there's skill development, right? So skill development probably falls in line with more using blast motion live, right? Like we're attacking this, like we're digging deep into the swing. We're trying to get better. We're trying to attain a new skill. Game development still needs to be focused on, right? We still need to learn how to play the game, play the scoreboard is what we kind of allude to quite a bit. So like you can have the approach of, hey, swing as hard as you can and still teach the game inside of that, right? Like, hey, this guy has thrown 1 first pitch strike in the first 3 innings. Why did you swing at the first pitch, right? Like that's game development for me. And separating the two, but putting them together when we evaluate players and evaluate development is really important. And like same thing with like winning versus player development, like put them together. It's okay to put them together. It doesn't have to be one versus the other. And then the second part would be about like technology and analytics going too far. Right now, like there's teams, there's facilities, there's college programs that believe that they have a really good system. And if it's being successful, like that's great. If they're successful and they want to keep going, they're not going to turn their eye to something that can help them. So a good analogy that our major league hitting coach uses is like, we have a team hotel that's like 10 minutes away from our Florida complex. You could walk there every day, right? But we could give you a bike. Would you use the bike? Every guy would say, yeah, right? We could take vans and it would take a little bit longer because we got to do shifts. We only have 2 vans, right? Guys would hop on the van. If we want to be really efficient and there's a bus, right? Guys are going to use the bus because we can get in and out of there as fast as we can. Same thing with any analytical or technology tool, right? If it's going to help us do things faster and more efficient, like you talked about earlier, why not use it? And then once you establish it, always be ready for what's next. Doesn't mean you're going to use it, but if there's a chance for it to make you get to the hotel and back faster, why not, right? Why not try it out?
I love that. So we got another from a dad of a 14. That's great. Joey, I love that. You just cut right to the chase on that. Thank you. We got a dad who just said, love to know how much tee work and non-live pitcher hitting college and major leaguers do as a part of their practice, and what should players focus on to develop their swings during this quarantine period?
Good question. So, like big leaguers use the tee. Some big leaguers don't use the tee. I would say almost all of them love the machine now, because with the average fastball velocity being faster than ever, they're trying to get looks on that as often as they can. Translating it to the quarantine, for me, the best tee drill that a young hitter can do is high tee. I think it promotes good swing qualities. It gets away from that hammering that low pitch over and over and over. It allows us to kind of get flat to the ball. And for me, if you watch on video, it just creates some easy qualities in the swing that you don't necessarily need to coach and cue up. And then all like side toss, also a no-brainer too. Teaches kids to kind of keep those hips closed and learn how to swing with some hips in a better position. Again, without having to really coach it.
Yep. So our next question comes from a very special ball player here. It's the oldest player to ever train at New York. Second oldest player to ever train New York Empire baseball. The question is, what's the best approach for the 76-year-old player with God-given talent who is not afraid to fail? If you think I'm kidding, I am not. I'll share screen on this one.
I see it. I have it in here.
I have it.
All right, we'll move on from that one. We'll come back to it.
No, I got an answer for him. It just
Go for it,
I'd
Derek.
have to see. I'd love to see, like, I'm sure Joey's the same thing. I'd love to see video, and I'd love to see swing data and really understand like what your swing is looking like from a data perspective and what your swing looks like from a visual perspective. Combine those, and you sound like someone that always wants to improve, and there's always an area to improve. So I know Joey could definitely cook up some things for you if he was able to throw you in some training environments and get some of your data.
Joey, be careful. The guy that wrote that question is definitely going to hit you up afterwards. It's going to come from my mail. I already know this. My phone's probably already lit up. It's going to say, can I take batting practice in St. Louis?
I don't have those kind of strings that I can pull.
Well, we took him. I'm going to tell a story real quick because we have another question we have to get to. He's a big diehard Yankees fan. And somebody helped me to get him on the field at Citi Field to take BP at Citi Field. And he shows up wearing a Yankees visor, and they almost threw him out. I told them, throw the guy out. Tell me, somebody rolls up in a Cubs hat to take beeps at St. Louis, just throw him out.
It ain't happening.
Okay, that's what I thought. So be careful, right? We'll be in the stadium. We're going to call somebody to get him into a stadium. All right. In a small apartment, will hitting into an upright gym mat produce useful data with blast?
Yes. If you're making contact with a baseball, it's all that matters. What it does after you make contact, it can move a foot and then die, and you're fine.
Awesome. Somebody asked a really good question, but he preceded it with, look, Joey, I'm going to put this out there. I'm not going to name him, but everybody's going to know who it was in our organization. How are the Cardinals going to deal with the Cubs winning the World Series again? Wait, but then he follows it up with a question that he wants you to answer. Should we just delete it or?
No, he can bring it on. It's all right. The Cubs got their little taste in 2016, and now they're on their high horse, I guess.
How do you keep kids and players, and this is for all three of us, I think, how do you keep kids and players from overthinking, being mechanical, to kind of where that balance is? And, for me, I think we touched on it earlier, which is the overthinking comes from the fear of failure and the desire to not fail rather than the simplistic approach, right? I mean, that has been the core and the heart of everything we've talked about tonight. The simplistic approach of your goal is to take your cage swing, your playtime swing, the hardest swing, your personal record swing, the swing that made Blast light up, into the game. And then there's no overthinking. What's the one thing we ask our players all the time? What's the one thing you can control? And they all know from age 5, they're like, yourself. So if I'm, for me, what we talk to players about is the overthinking comes from, oh, I don't want to get out. I hope I don't let my team down. My father's got the iPhone 86 and he's standing over the backstop filming me, right? For me, you get rid of overthinking by saying, you have one goal today. Go swing as hard as you can, right? Go play. And then there's no overthinking. So I wonder if you guys have any other thoughts on that. Hang on, I'm going to turn the lights back on. That was interesting. That was the arena's way of saying go home. So you guys can jump in. I just got to tell you.
No, I think obviously you mentioned simplicity. That's the best way. I think it starts in the cage. Trusting your swing in the cage off drill work, trusting it off of BP, trusting it off of machine, and eventually bringing that into the game is the best approach to kind of take that big mechanical approach out of your mind, and then ultimately dwindling it down to just hit a good pitch hard, swing hard. Like if we're talking about Empire baseball, win this pitch. Simple phrases like that. One of our good friends, Gary and I's good friends, mental skills coach with the Seattle Mariners, he talks about the 15 seconds you have between each pitch for a pitcher and a hitter. It's okay at the beginning of those 15 seconds to dissect what just happened. But as you get to those last 3-4 seconds, you better have one thought in your head. And if for you guys it's swing hard, then that's what got to be your last thought before you dig in and get ready to rip. But I'm a really big fan of that. He calls it the funnel, funneling that 15 seconds down to one thought.
Love it. Gary, you have anything
Franco.
to add?
No, that's our guy. Yeah, he's awesome at that. And I think it comes down to even me playing, like the mental side is enormous. I had a year, my junior year, I hit 240 with 2 home runs at Miami. My senior year, I hit 295 with 19. And the big difference was mental approach and everything else, from a mental perspective. My swing barely changed.
It's funny because we say that all the time. We say you could have the best swing in the world. If this is not in the right place and you're thinking about not failing and messing up, the best swing in the world is not going to help you at that point. The mental approach and the lack of fear of failure, right? The desire to just go up and swing as hard as you can, hit a baseball as hard as you can. That's a prerequisite for success.
I like Jeff McNeil on the Mets talks like he's a very simplistic guy when you hear him talk hitting. For him, it's like he doesn't like striking out, right? He just wants to get hits. And I think his approach is so simple and like a lot of people wouldn't believe it, but like that's what when he gets in the box, he is determined to get a hit and not strike out. And that works for him, but it's simple, right? And I really enjoy hearing that. And for other guys, it's just like, I'm up there, I'm just thinking like get a pitch over the middle of the plate. And they're big leaguers, but they think like they're a youth baseball player almost. And that's what makes them so special.
We'll get one. I know we're over on, I know you got some things to do tonight other than hang with us. Although one of the people just wrote, are we really going all night? Our last question, what advice do you have for the kids and parents that are on here? And, I'll start and just roll it to you guys. For parents, don't tell your son or daughter to go get a hit. They can't control whether or not it's a hit, right? You tell your son, go get a hit, and they crush a ball. 200, and we talked about this the last time we were chatting. Crush a ball 280 feet, and a center fielder lays out, puts it in his pocket. The kid goes back to the dugout, goes back to his father having failed because the expectation and the desire and the goal was to get a hit rather than swing as hard as you can, go hit a baseball harder than you've ever hit a baseball, which they succeeded at. Instead, tell them to go play. Tell them to swing as hard as they can. Tell them you love watching them play. And if you need to say something more, tell them go swing as hard as you can, run as fast as you can, and throw as hard as you can, because those are the 3 things they can control. And if they do those things well, the success will follow. So for me, that's it. That's New York Empire baseball in a nutshell. For kids, parents, for anybody, that's it. So what other advice do you have for kids and parents that are on here tonight?
I think you touched on it. The 3 physical ones right there, like, is huge. But for me, what I always tell kids and tell parents is the 2 things you can can really, really, really control every single day, whether you're in a game or you're just like in the grocery store, is your attitude and your effort, right? Like you got a good attitude, you got to have a good attitude, and you got to have a good effort on top of those, those physical controllables. So I think that's a big thing I try and preach to parents is like reward your kid if he has a good attitude after being 0 for 4. That says a lot about a player. Reward your kid if he gave a good effort when his team was down 9 runs. Because ultimately, as players move up in this game and they're getting recruited and scouted and so on, like people are always watching you and they're always creating an opinion, whether that's a strength coach or whether that's your teacher or your professor in college who communicates with your head coach. People are always creating an opinion of you. So having a good attitude and having a good effort is very easy to control, and it's very easy to reward as parents as well.
That's awesome. Gare?
Joe, I'll keep mine short and sweet. Control what you can control. Have a really good process. Understand who you are as a player. Play to those strengths. Always look to obviously improve your weaknesses, but really understand what's going to be your calling card when you play this game. And don't be afraid to have that identity and have a love for the game, have a passion for the game. The last thing is find someone much older than you that you want to play like, that you want to be like, and just do what they do. Model yourself after them. If you look at these big leaguers, they work their tails off. They approach the game the right way. Every aspect of their life and their career, they take very seriously. And you can do that now. Just because you're not a professional baseball player doesn't mean you can't treat yourself like that. And treating yourself like that will only pay huge dividends for you as you move throughout your career.
That's awesome. I mean, I can't thank you both enough for kicking off New York Empire Experts. I'll tell you the truth. I mean, we had high expectations, and we're getting some love nonstop by text and email right now. You guys surpassed expectation. I had pretty high expectations because I know you two. Thank you on behalf of everybody that's on the call, everybody that's going to be watching the replay, on behalf of every New York Empire baseball player now and forever that's going to be exposed to this. Thank you. I mean, the advice, the insights are incredible. Gary, on top of that, and I've said it a couple of times here tonight, for you to reach out and go above and beyond and offer what you did to our players, particularly during a time that's so difficult where we're sitting at home and look, we're doing everything we can to train ball players now, but the addition of Blast is going to be really special for us. So honestly, I mean, I can't say thank you enough for that. For those of you who are on the call, we're going to send out an email with all the details of how to get it. They'll go online on our site. We're going to send in the order. It's going to ship directly to you for free. Gary, that's another, I really, it's just nonstop what you did. So thank you for that. It's huge.
Of course.
And,
yeah,
Joey,
really excited to partner with you guys.
Awesome. And Joey, really, thanks for taking the time. Like I said, first time I met you, I was just blown away. Couldn't wait to talk to you again. And for you to jump in with our players and families, thanks so much.
No, yeah, thank you for having me. It's sounds like you guys are going to have a good partnership with Blast, which is really exciting, and love to hear your guys' experience moving forward. And maybe one day, once things calm down and get back to normal, make our way out there to the facility. All
right, now you're talking.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I met Ollie, just a last story. I met Ollie Marmol years ago when he was kind of in your role, when he was first shifting gears from player to coach. And he was all about the tech back then. I mean, that's where he lives. So I'm going to shoot him a note tonight and say, hey, next time you're in town, I want to see if we can make all this happen. Because that would be
he's a really good dude. And, as a young coach, he's a guy I look up to. Seeing his path, but he, even though he's in the big leagues as a bench coach now, he still takes the time to, chat with young coaches like me. So I always got a ton of respect for him. I really like him.
Same. Guys, really, on behalf of everybody and to all the participants, thanks for joining us tonight. Gary, again, thank you. And thank you, Joey. Thanks for being here.
Yep.
Staying in touch, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Jordan. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.